Assalamu alaikum guys, what's up? Welcome back to another tea talk. Today I want to talk about finding your identity after you converted to Islam. This topic was recommended by Sarah Zaire. I hope I'm saying your name right, but thank you Sarah for suggesting this topic. I think that is very important to talk about this kind of stuff, mostly because I believe that Islam is a way of life, and so when you convert to Islam, you're not just changing like your belief and the way you dress and things like that. You're changing like your entire life, and that can be super duper, overwhelming and daunting and scary. And so I think it's very important to like open this conversation, start this conversation so that we can address some of the struggles. So yeah, in this video I'm going to try really hard to briefly talk about, changing our entire lifestyle and what it's like to dive into a whole new community with whole new ideals or expectations, especially for women, and particularly women who wear the hijab. Before we get into any of that though, I'm gonna be making my tea, of course. So while I do that, grab yourself a snack, grab something to drink, and let's just chat. Alright, so for today's drink, I'm gonna be trying the cranberry and pomegranate. I can never say that word, pomegranate. I don't know how to say it. I call it pomegranate, but yeah, I've been corrected on it before. But yeah, I don't know. How do you guys say it?
Is that my jacket?
Yeah.
How does a jacket go with your pajamas?
I'm not wearing pajamas. I am.
Woo! Have fun on your tea talk.
Shut up! You're so mean. Yeah, that was my husband. But yeah, I have my tea maker here with me, so I'm just going to put the tea in there. Even though this one is already in a tea bag, I actually like to take the tea leaves out and put it in my infuser, just so I can get like all the flavor. That makes any sense. I don't even know if it makes a difference, to be honest. I think it does. Like, I think it's like a whole lot stronger when I do it this way. But yeah, I'm just gonna let that brew over there. Alright, so while that's brewing, let's get started with the video. Now, when I converted into Islam, it was a very long process of learning and researching. However, all that learning and research was mainly to do with the religion itself, rather than like the cultures within the religion. And let's just get that out of the way really quick. Like, every single religion has a culture of its own, and this culture is a mixture of the different communities that practices that particular religion. And more often than not, culture and religion gets mixed up, and so as a revert and as like a new member, coming into the ummah, coming into this new community, it can get very confusing because, this new community has its own culture, and thus it has its own like whole new set of expectations and stigmas and things like that, and it can be very challenging. A good example of that is femininity and what that means for different cultures. Now, I know that some cultures out there, they value shyness a lot in a woman, and when a woman acts more shy and more dainty and has a very, feminine laughter, or do you know what I mean? Like, they're very soft and they're very gentle, and I'm not saying anything is wrong with that. I too find it very elegant, and I wish I could like be those things, but me myself, I've always been like how I am. Like, you can hear it in my voice itself. Like, I don't have a very feminine voice. I don't know, I would argue I don't have a very feminine voice. I think it's very deep in comparison to a lot of other women, and if you hear my laugh as well, it's a very non-feminine laugh. And I remember when I first came into this community, like, I was advised to, correct that about like who I am, in that even, in the way that I talk, be more soft and be more gentle in like my voice, because apparently my voice is very like not just deep, but it has like diaphragmy way to it. I don't know how else to say that. They said it as like vocal, but like you're speaking, of course you're using your voice, you know what I mean? Like, I understand it, but at the same time I'm just like, okay, like, I don't know how to not have a voice when I'm trying to speak. And again, I want to stress this to you guys, like, there's nothing wrong if you are shy and you are like dainty and very gentle. Nothing's wrong with that if that's you. But like, forcing that kind of idea and that kind of practice into someone who is really not, in any way like that, just to fulfill like your own idea of how a woman should act. I think there's something very wrong about that. I don't want to dwell too much on that topic because that's not what this video is about. You know, this video isn't about like femininity and feminism and all that kind of stuff and how, you know, culture ties into that. I don't want to dive too deep into that, so I am just gonna leave it at that, and we can have a whole other conversation in a whole other video if you guys are interested in that. But the next struggle I want to talk about is our history. Now, as a convert, I have a whole history. I have a whole other life, a whole other upbringing that is very different from what born Muslims were exposed to. There's a whole other culture at play with that as well, and a whole other, you know, different traditions that, you know, I used to practice and I grew up with and things like that that are of course very different to those who were born Muslim and not exposed to a different religion. I just feel like there's a lack of sympathy and understanding or empathy or whatever it is. There's a lack of acknowledgement in that we converts have a whole other history and our families have a whole different tradition that is so different from, you know, the Islamic practice, but we cannot and will not just shun all of that away because it is still a part of us. Just because we changed our faith doesn't mean that we are gonna forget our family or treat them rudely or not partake in like family traditions. Like, okay, this is going to be a very, very controversial topic because a lot of people have very differing opinions of this. But for example, Christmas. Christmas is a very, very big thing, right? Christmas is honestly just a huge thing with Filipinos, and some of my most cherished, most like fun and happiest, you know, memories as a child was during Christmas. And of course I'm going to have, you know, sentimental feelings when it comes to Christmas time when I can't celebrate it anymore. But I remember when I was still living with my family before I was married and things like that, and I would help out with, you know, decorating, you know, the Christmas tree and putting Christmas lights on and helping with Christmas dinners. And a lot of people had a lot of feelings with that, whether that be online or in real life. I got advice from both in that it's shirk, or that, you know, I should just fully not partake in it, just stay up in my room and refuse to like help or anything like that. Which me, like personally, I feel very, very strongly against that, solely because when it comes to, you know, celebrations to do with Islam, like for example Ramadan, my family goes out of their way to help me out in practices in my own religion that is very, very different from theirs. Like my mom would cook me like, you know, iftar, or would cook me something for suhoor. Like they would go out of their way to support me. Like my mom would even go to a halal butcher to, you know, cook my favorite like chicken or something to break my fast with for me. And I just think it's really, really wrong to not reciprocate that kind of gesture, and that they're being accepting and they're trying to understand and do their best to try and support. And what, I'm just going to like lock myself up in the room and like refuse to even like help my mom make dinner for Christmas. And I would argue that that's one of the biggest struggles of converts that is very different to the struggle of like a born Muslim. Like the whole coexistence, like we have to coexist with like different faiths on a much like deeper level than most born Muslims. I would argue that because, you know, these people that are different from us are our families, and we are connected by blood, and we have an entire history with these people. And on that note, one of my biggest pet peeves is when people think that it's okay to talk about Christians a certain way. It's Christians for me because my entire like family and my background and things like that revolves around Christianity and Catholicism and all that. And I think that people feel comfortable to talk about their criticisms of that particular religion with me because I come from that religion. But what they don't understand is when you criticize Christians, you're criticizing my family, and I'm not going to stand for that. And yeah, it's that whole issue about people just expecting us to neglect or reject or fully ignore like our entire history, our entire background, and pretend like it all didn't happen and it all didn't matter because it's not Islamic or whatever. But it's still a very, very big part of us, because for God's sakes, it's our upbringing. Like it's still what led us to be where we're at now. It's unfair to just expect us to forget about it, forget about our culture, forget about our family's traditions or our culture's traditions and things like that, as if it means nothing. And that all plays a huge part in like our identity issues, because like when you come into a new community, they're expecting you to also take on board like their own culture and forget your own. And I just think that that's like a really BS expectation, because we accepted the religion but not the culture. I would even argue that there's a huge like double standard in that, because when it comes to like something of Desi culture or Arab culture or African culture, that it doesn't particularly conform to Islamic teaching and it's more cultural than it is religion, when you call them out on it, they'll just tell you like, oh no, you just don't understand because you're new. But when it comes to like your culture, they're very quick, like some, I'm not saying all, some are very quick to just call you out and tell you like that's complete shirk, you shouldn't be doing that, and all that kind of stuff. A really good example of this would be like rolling your eyes on like the whole tradition of Christmas, but being okay with, for example, the Desi tradition of putting turmeric on the face, where men who are non-mahram are touching your face and putting turmeric on your face when they're not meant to, or dancing, having big grand weddings and dancing in those weddings. Like these are things that are still like frowned down upon in Islam. Same with Christmas, of course, but like people within those cultures are more accepting of those practices, but they will like fully frown down and shun the whole tradition of Christmas because they don't understand it, because it's not part of their culture. And while we're already in this topic, let's bring the whole hijab into it as well. Like hijab is something that is fully not in our culture at all. Like most converts don't come from a culture that welcomes the hijab. It is something that is so drastically different from our own culture, and thus it makes it very, very hard to put it on. And sometimes I feel like people don't understand the struggle that some converts have to go through in order to just wear the hijab on their heads. And it pains me so much to see so many people get criticized over the hijab, not knowing how hard it was already like put it on and keep it on and things like that. And some people still have the nerve to like bully those people into thinking that they're not doing it properly and that they should just take it off as if it means nothing. And some converts are not ready to put the hijab on straight away, or not ready to put the hijab on period, or still feel differently about it, like adopting it in their life themselves. And some of them are made to feel as though they haven't proven that they're Muslim enough yet. And it just breaks my heart to hear things like that. Again, the Muslim revert community is quite tight, and so we hear about these things quite often, and sisters confess these things to us in hopes that we have like advice for them and stuff like that. And honestly, it's just heartbreaking that you have to look like a Muslim in order to be considered like Muslim, and that your decision to convert is taken more seriously. And I think that there's something like seriously wrong with that entire concept, because changing your religion isn't just about looking like you changed your religion, it's about the practice in itself. Of course the hijab is it's a huge part of our practice, I'm not denying that at all, but it's not the be all end all of our practice either. The best advice I can give you guys is to increase your knowledge in Islam. Read the Quran, watch lectures, learn about the different opinions of the scholars, and just strengthen your iman and strengthen your knowledge in Islam, because it's what's going to help you differentiate between what is actually religious and what is cultural. And of course, take your time with this journey and know that there's nothing wrong with doing that. Like, don't let the pressure get to you. Like, this is your journey. At the end of the day, it's only you that's going to answer for your actions, not everyone else. So take your time to learn and understand in order to make sure that the decisions and commitments that you are, practicing are your own. Alright, you guys, I think I'm gonna end it there. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that it benefited you in some way. If you did like this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!